Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Extra Shot, the Telecom TV programme where we delve deeper into some of the delicious topics that were covered during the DSP Leaders World Forum 2020. My name is Ray Lemaitre, I'm the editorial director at TelecomTV. I'm going to be joined on this programme by a host of special guests, but also by my friends and colleagues, Guy Daniels from TelecomTV and Chris Lewis from Lewis Insight. Welcome, Guy.
Hello, Ray. Good to be back.
Good to have you back. And Chris, hello again.
Hi, Ray. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, well, in our previous Extra Shot programs, we've covered topics such as 5G, edgeonomics, the evolution of customer services, and the development of digital services. And those programs are available in the video section on the TelecomTV website. But today we're going to be looking at two new topics, and that is cloud native and automation, two incredibly important topics to CSPs and evolving DSPs everywhere around the world. So where, as usual, I'm hosting this program from TelecomTV's virtual coffee shop. And let's find out, to start the program, what our special guests of today prefer when it comes to hot beverages. So let's first talk to Steve Legg from NetNumber.
So definitely a coffee drinker. I enjoy my coffee black and as strong as I can get it. So sometimes that includes combining a long black with some shots of espresso, but typically, I drink the Green Mountain Coffee Roasters Double Black Diamond. So that's my go-to coffee, certainly when I'm at home.
Double Black Diamond sounds like a cross between a coffee and a beer. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but anyway, let's hear now from Caroline Chappell, industry analyst at Analysis Mason.
Right. Well, I'm going to give you a bit of a mixed answer, Ray, because I am basically a tea drinker in the UK. But I don't touch tea outside the UK, so then I become a coffee drinker. And in that case, well, it's a toss-up. It depends on the time of day. You know, a good latte to start the day if you're tramping around MWC in the days that used to happen, or you can't beat an excellent espresso after a good lunch in the Mediterranean.
Well, not much coffee for Caroline this year then, by the sound of it. And finally, let's hear from Sumen Chatterjee, who's at Blue Planet, which is part of Sienna.
Well, I'm a member of a coffee club.
Oh, good.
I live in the US, so I mainly go to Starbucks or Peet's, but I prefer the French roast.
Okay. And black coffee, cappuccino, what are you going for?
I like black coffee.
Well, black coffee is the answer to many questions, as we know here on Extra Shot. So we have another special guest on this episode, and that's Neil McRae from BT. But for anybody who saw episode 1 of Extra Shot, you'll know that he's already shared his outrageous selections when it comes to beverages. So go and check out that, or go and check out that program, or you'll see Neil's preferences later on in the program when we come to our leaders board, our coffee, tea and drinks leaders board. Okay, so let's get stuck into our first topic of this show, and that's cloud native. So there were a number of sessions during the DSP Leaders World Forum that covered cloud native specifically, or where it came into the conversation. And there's a lot of challenges, opportunities, and developments going on in terms of cloud native currently within the global telecoms industry. So I asked Steve Legg from NetNumber about what he's hearing from the market.
I think there are certainly going to be some early adopters when we talk about the 5G core. We do see in the RFPs that we receive some greenfield infrastructure that will be cloud native, but by far and away, most of the discussions that we're having with our customers and RFPs that we see are based on the existing infrastructure that the customer already has. So certainly the NFV, the investment in virtualization and NFV has been significant over the last few years across the industry. So many of our customers are looking to continue to leverage that infrastructure, but then deploy cloud native functionality for 5G on top of that NFV investment. NFV really started the operational change, but cloud native really drives another phase of that change in terms of the need to, and certainly to support a decentralized core network that's widely distributed to the edge as 5G deploys. Application automation is essential.
Okay, so we're hearing this from the industry in general, that 5G core is driving some of the early cloud native movements and developments in the industry. But what else is going through the minds of the operators in terms of the cloud native topic right now? Let's find out from Caroline Chappell at Analysis Mason.
I think the industry is at an interesting crossroad, and that is really because there's an existential question behind this. Which is the cloud part of the network, or should it just be regarded as a building block, and the real network intelligence or the things that make a network are actually happening in the application layer, as application software? And if that's the case, do operators really need to concern themselves with trying to build a cloud stack, trying to integrate all those cloud technologies? Certainly the large operators still think that they need to understand and have their own clouds in competition with the public cloud vendors. The question for me is whether that will change, given what's happening with cloud native, where there is far stronger demarcation between the network as a kind of super application running on top of a commodity cloud stack.
Okay, so obviously there's a lot going on in terms of potential telco strategies there. I mean, Chris, do you think that the operators are ready right now to start adding cloud native functionality into their existing production network environments?
I think most of the evidence that we heard about during DSP, as well as the research I've been looking at, suggests that they see themselves at the beginning of that journey. I think Steve mentioned that people are starting to look at it. Obviously, 5G is something that they're looking at, but that's in some ways a little bit down the line. A lot of the early adoption that we're seeing in terms of cloud native is around more to do with the customer experience and that front end being exposed to the customer. It's a much longer transition to change all of the back end to get towards this cloud native. But the good news is that there is recognition within the telecoms industry that they have to do something like this in order to recalibrate the organizations, to shift the telcos to play a part in what Caroline described as this emerging ecosystem with the hyperscalers and other cloud players. So yes, they're moving, it's slow, but the recognition is there and they are on that journey.
Okay, great. And Guy, are you getting a sense from the operators at all about the timescales, the speed of which they might start to introduce this cloud native functionality?
Yes, Ray. I mean, they're absolutely underway to different degrees by different telcos, as you would expect. And as Chris says, we're at the very beginning of this journey. We were hearing at the Cloud Native Telco event in December. Is this a 10-year journey? Is this a 15-year journey? It's a long journey. Are we at year one? Are we at year two? We're in that kind of range. I mean, there's still so many important questions to be asked, and as we discovered in December, the challenges seem to be around coordination and collaboration within the ecosystem, the all-important people and processes, including an overhaul of telco procurement. That's something that really hasn't been addressed yet. NFV evolution, they're not going to junk this stuff, are they? Go faster, operationalize. Let's get some proof of concepts out there, and of course security. And this has all come out of our recent industry meetups. And Ray, if I could make an absolutely shameless plug now, and why not? This year's Cloud Native Telco event won't be held in person. It's going to be held online, as you may expect. We're going to be hosting this 15th to the 17th of September this year. And to whet your appetites, we are making available the final report from last December's event. It's going to be available for free. If you're signed up to TelecomTV, you're signed up to DSP Leaders, just click the link on the TelecomTV page under this video and you'll get that.
Well, you're right, Guy. That was absolutely shameless. But I am glad you mentioned that, because there are so many pieces of this cloud native puzzle, and one of them is the role of the industry bodies, the industry organisations. And actually, during the DSP Leaders World Forum, we actually had a question come in from one of the viewers who was asking about what role these industry bodies are playing in terms of the development of NFV and of cloud native functionality in the telecom space. So bodies such as the common NFVI Telco Task Force, I can never say that in one go, also known as CNTT, and also the ETSI NFV group, which of course has been around for more than 6 years now. And also asking, are they doing the same things? Are they doing different things? So I went back to Caroline Chappell at Analysis Mason and asked her about this, because she's regularly talking with these groups and is up to date with what's going on. So let's find out what Caroline had to say about that.
Yes, I think that CNTT does have a role going forward, but then it's also there's the CNCF Telecoms User Group, for example, which is also trying to define what's needed in the cloud stack for operators, and of course there is ETSI NFV, and I think it's been a source of disappointment to many people in the industry that the open source community and ETSI NFV haven't worked more closely together. I see this as quite a sort of European versus a US divide, actually. I think ETSI NFV is going to have to rethink the Mano architecture in a cloud native world, and that's pretty obvious. There's a lot of stuff happening in Kubernetes that will supersede what goes on in the ETSI NFV Mano. CNTT needs to really think about this separation of the application network as an application from the commodity cloud stack, and create an intent-based interface, a proper intent-based interface. And I think the goal for CNTT, if it really wants to make this work, is to get the abstraction, that intent-based interface that the public cloud providers seem to have got right, work for the telecoms industry.
I mean, so very often opinion is divided about what kind of role these organisations and group can play, and how much influence they could have, should have, do have. Guy, do these industry groups and organisations, are they helping?
Short answer, absolutely. Yes, I think the very existence is proof of interest, but, and there's always a big but here. They have to encourage the right cross-section of industry to sign up, and also be active participants. And the open source groups especially, they've got to retain interest within the community, because I think too often you see too many people duck out when the going gets tough, and then they go and join a more popular or trendy project. They also have got to have a real clear route from debate and discussion through to actual implementation by operators. And they've got to make that fast, and it's got to be iterative. I mean, ETSI's been around since the dawn of time. It's a known quantity. CNTT is only a couple of years old. We've been following it since its inception. And I'm sorry to say, Ray, that although you spent a long time trying to get the acronym right, it's all changed, because as of a few weeks ago in May, they've decided to keep the acronym CNTT, but they've changed the name from Common NFVI Telco Task Force to Cloud Infrastructure Telco Task Force. And I know what you're going to say. Infrastructure starts with an I and not an N, but hey, crazy kids, eh? But it's interesting how they've dropped the legacy NFVI. Oh. NFVI was perhaps applicable from the origins of the group when it kind of came out of OPNFV, and they were looking at trying to create or consolidate around a small set of NFVI architectures, and now they're looking at this broader descriptor, cloud infrastructure.
Right. Well, I'm sure that probably doesn't change what they're actually doing, because they were already looking ahead and starting to work on essentially developments and blueprints and models that weren't necessarily strictly NFV. But whatever the work they're doing, Chris, do you think that that these bodies and groups and developments are they good for the industry? Do they help?
I think we always need input from standards-based bodies and industry groups. I think for me, the issue is how seriously the operators, the telcos themselves, have taken this in the past. And as I said in the previous comment, I think because they're now at the beginning of that journey, they've decided to make this significant change and embrace the whole cloud environment. I think we'll see them getting more and more involved. And I think that's what we really need to have, is the key telcos, and indeed layer 2 and layer 3, all these guys involved, because it's the momentum we need to get behind it for the industry as a whole is important. Actually, making the industry work together rather than competing. It's also indicative of the fact that it brings together some telecom oriented, some IT oriented, some cloud oriented, and these are quite different areas of interest with their own momentums, their own drivers, and indeed their own influences. So yeah, I'd like to see more and more from the telcos themselves helping shape what comes out of these different standards organizations.
Okay, well, I'm sure that trend's going to continue, as is the trend towards automation, which is our other main topic today, and very closely associated, of course, with cloud native. Now, automated processes for the past few years have been very high on the agendas of the telcos in terms of what they need to focus on and address. And that's because automation is absolutely critical to getting greater efficiency in terms of the operations and processes need to run next generation networks. So I asked Sumen Chatterjee from Blue Planet if automation can help operators to get the best out of 5G.
Sure, absolutely. So if you look at 5G, 5G is designed with key principles such as SDN and NFV. And SDN and NFV are used to make 5G more dynamic. And if you look at with SDN and NFV, the complexity increases in the network. And how you manage that complexity, and that's where the automation comes in. Automation has to be ground up for 5G, because if you think about managing SDN network and managing NFV network, that adds complexity, that adds a different layer. And that's where automation has to be ground up. It also provides an opportunity for network operators to manage it more efficiently, so that way they can operationalize 5G network with automation. So net, automation has to be ground up. Automation cannot be an afterthought, and automation is actually at the core of the 5G network.
Okay, absolutely. Well, Chris, automated operations, I mean, we're already seeing, recently we just wrote about this on TelecomTV about how Orange is actually managing to introduce closed loop automation, save money, save time, save on truck rolls. But this isn't easy to introduce, is it? I mean, zero touch automation, this is a really hard goal to get to, isn't it?
It is, given the legacy, given the history and the way in which telecoms companies have been run in the past, and the silos within which they've run. And we're very conscious now that with revenues flattening, indeed shrinking in some markets, that we have to reduce that cost of operation because it's a big chunk on top of the capex. So I think the momentum is there, the understanding is there. I mean, talked about recalibration of the organization given the backdrop of cloud and the backdrop of the ecosystem. I think operations, and actually the good news is, from certainly the experience under the corona situation, a lot of the operations managed to be carried out with relatively little touch. So I think it's very much in the minds of the telcos themselves. It's also very much in the minds of the suppliers in the ecosystem, perhaps all the traditional suppliers we might have talked about, but also some of the ones coming in from slightly left field. And I think that's the good news for the telecom industry, is that a lot of the suppliers are beginning to put a lot more automation into their offerings, so it actually it plugs in and is effective from day one.
Yes, as long as they're able to do that without locking in the operators, which of course is what the operators are always looking to get out of.
It's
So,
always the
Guy, do
game,
you
right?
see?
Yeah.
Guy, do you see a future with very little or even no manual operations at what will then be, of course, digital service providers?
Absolutely. Yes. Do I see a future with no manual operations at all? Yeah. I think that it's as Chris nicely summarises. It's difficult. There are issues involved. It's going to take a while to permeate throughout the industry. But if you're not automating your operations, then you're just heading for an extinction level event. It's goodbye and please close the door on the way out.
Okay, well, on that bombshell, some operators, of course, are already introducing, as we mentioned before, some automated processes, and in fact have already started to introduce cloud native functionality as well. And one of those is BT. So let's find out from Chief Architect Neil McRae about what BT is doing in terms of automation and cloud native.
The cool thing that we've automated actually was all, that we really had to, was around the whole TV platform. That's where we kind of started big. We built a proper CI/CD pipeline. The whole thing's cloud native, and as we provision customers, or we provision new content, or we take content off, or we do special offers, that entire thing, soup to nuts, is automated.
Right.
And when you've got a football league that starts in August, or hopefully starts in August, if this one currently finishes, you kind of have 1 million customers show up your door wanting to subscribe, and you have no choice but to do that automated. So we automate the provisioning, we automate the billing, we then also automate the network deployment for multicast, and that's been a really big proof of concept for us, and an outstanding piece of work.
And hats off to BT, because it works. I mean, a couple of years of viewing BT Sports coverage of the European football tournaments, them showing multiple games and switching from screen to screen. It's a very customer friendly experience, I think. So it's clearly working for them. Now, clearly what BT has done here is it's picked one particular part of its business, which of course was a new one. So in a way, it was kind of greenfield, and it's introduced cloud native and automated processes in that way. Chris, is that the way forward for operators? Should they be picking one part of their business and saying, right, we're going to start there, we're going to learn there, we're going to make that good, and then start to take it from there around to other parts of their operations?
Well, I think it's realistic in the way they're looking at different business cases, different parts of their organizations. I think we heard from Swisscom similarly at a Great Telco Debate, talking about the same, taking that TV and building it on cloud native. But I guess the other side of it was we've also heard from organizations like Orange with their Flex, where they built cloud native from scratch on a new offering to be more automated. So I think we find very different approaches in different telcos around the world, where they're benefiting from the availability of these services. But it takes that leap of faith, doesn't it? Where they could try and build it themselves, which is what they would have done in the past and in their old constructs. But actually, in order to get the service up and running, and especially something as flexible as requirements from TV and sport, they realised that if they built it in the old way, they would never get the service out to the customer in a sufficient time frame, let alone in a flexible enough manner that they can adapt and modify services as and when required. So yeah, I think it's very much that individual business case. You can't do everything. We've already talked about that. It's too big a lift, too big cost to lift and shift everything. So pick on a few things. Do the separate brand, if you like, the separate brand offering, and pick issues like the TV side, which are, let's face it, not absolutely at the core revenue-wise for many of these operators. They're a bit peripheral from that point of view, but hopefully the learnings from that will be drawn back into the organization, especially when they're so high profile as TV and sport. And that will help drive the rest of the organization to adopt this more cloud native approach.
Okay, well, that brings us towards the end of another episode of Extra Shot. But before we go, let's get an update on where we are with the Extra Shot Hot Beverage Leaderboard. Let's take a look. Okay. We've got Caroline Chappell is sitting on the fence there, straddling the coffee and tea. Now, I know Guy and Chris, I know both of you are desperate to get your pictures on there, and I have deliberately been teasing you by not asking you for your preferences. I don't want to hear them now. We'll save that. There's many more Extra Shots to come, and we will get to you in the end. But yes, I wonder how long Neil McRae is going to last as an outlier on his own, all the way on one side of the board there. Maybe we need to
realise,
speak
though,
to
Ray, that we've made a branding change, don't you? Have you spotted the branding change?
the brand. Yes, please talk us through that.
I think it's very timely, because we've been taking our cues from the CNTT and decided it's time for a rebrand, and we've decided that actual virtual beverage functions just wasn't cutting it anymore, and we had to look at what the future of portable beverages was, and it's obviously containers, isn't it? I mean, the whole industry is going to containers, so we've relaunched as CBF, which is containerized beverage functions. So there you go. And we've done the most important thing that any open source project can do, and that is come up with a logo and print out some stickers. So I think that's the hard work done.
And of course, importantly as well, you're introducing a new acronym into the industry, which is where all such movements need to start. So jolly well done. Okay, well, thanks very much, chaps, for joining me on this latest episode of Extra Shot. Thanks to Guy, thanks to Chris. You'll both be back, I certainly hope, for episode 4 and beyond. And thank you to everybody for watching. Join us on the next one. And in the meantime, carry on brewing.